AntiSJW, sir. Thousands of them.
Fair warning, today's video is mostly just going to be me wonking on about stuff, which is why I'm not over to one side, because I don't really intend or need to throw in any cute graphics or anything over here like I normally do, you know, little in-jokes and things. So fair warning, if that's not your bag, go watch a different video. So yeah, things have this funny way of coming together, as I've mentioned before, and last night and this morning, watching several videos on YouTube, I was struck by a kind of common thread through the kind of people that I watch. Not necessarily people I agree with, I try to watch people that I don't agree with as well. There was a video by Tim Pool drawing on things that Kern had said about the use of language and weaponry by the pseudo-left, the regressive left, the social justice warriors, whatever you want to call them, as long as you understand who I'm talking about. And both of them seemed to feel that there was a reluctance amongst the radical centrists or even the right to race to the bottom and sink to that level. I don't think that's true when it comes to the right. I don't think that's true when it comes to conservatives. I mean, you only have to look back to the Obama administration to see that they weren't shy about throwing labels around or casting aspersions about people. But it probably is true about people who consider themselves liberals, whether they're left or right or whatever. And then this morning, while waiting for my car to be picked up for a service, I was watching Sargon talk with Nagle. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Sargon, certainly not anymore, less and less as time goes on and as he has shifted further and further right, and his support for UKIP and everything. And I don't support or particularly like Nagle either. I felt that while her book Kill All Normies had some useful insights, it was mostly not understanding the things that she was examining. You know, Keck, Pepe, Gamergate, things like this. I don't think she really understood what she was examining in that book, and I did a lengthy critique of that on this channel. I'll add to the end. If you're watching on YouTube, it'll come up as one of the videos at the end that you can click on. Essentially a playlist, but you know. So here's two people that I don't agree with, butting heads. But there was a line of commonality, a line of agreement between Mark Kern's comments, Tim Pool's comments, Sargon's comments, and Nagle's comments. And that was this sense of defeatism, that you're fighting a rearguard action against identity politics on both the left and the right, and that you can't win. I mean, they disagreed on all kinds of different particulars, but there seemed to be this idea that for a liberal, open-minded outlook to win, things would have to be profoundly different than they are. I don't know that I agree with that. I think there's hope. It's not hard to understand on the face of it why these movements, why this movement, the social justice warriors, the pseudo-left, whatever you want to call them, it's not that hard to understand why they're so successful. You know, identity is important to people for some reason. On the basis of these qualities, they get damned or praised according to race, gender, sexuality, and so on. And these are integral to a lot of people's understanding of self. So it's you know, powerful mojo to be messing with, for one. By any means necessary is an inherently strong position because it's inherently and innately adaptive. The means that you are willing and able to employ can shift according to who or what it is that you're attacking. So that's adaptive, that's evolutionary, you know, that's an inherent strength. It can shift and change to attack. And being willing to be a hypocrite is a pretty strong position as well. If you are not required to adhere to your own standards, then other people trying to engage you on the standards that you appear to profess are just going to fall into endless pitfalls. So it's certainly easy to understand why left-wing identitarianism is in such a strong position, and it's also easy to see why their counterpoint, their enemy, right-wing identitarianism, is also on the rise. You know, these things feed each other. The irony is that the very thing that they're most against is the very thing that they're fueling, and there you go. So yeah, it can certainly seem like they're winning, and it's easy to understand why they're winning. But deploying their own tactics against them, racing to the bottom, becoming like them, I don't know that that is a really good way forward, and it's not like they don't also have weaknesses.
You've never experienced depression in your entire fucking life. Neither have I. You're fucking a white male.
There are inherent weaknesses in this movement, to which anti-authoritarians and liberals and old-school lefties like myself all find ourselves in opposition to. I mean, the mere fact that all of us who disagree on a huge amount of things are all united in our distaste and displeasure with this movement, whatever you want to call it, yeah, that's demonstrative of a weakness. Everywhere they go, everywhere they make their influence felt, they gain thousands upon thousands of new enemies. Gamergate, Comicsgate, Star Wars fans, you name it. Everything they go into and they shit upon, they get thousands upon thousands of new enemies, and often people who are otherwise apolitical. But you come in and you fuck with their shit and they get pissed off. And unfortunately, the sane left isn't around to catch some of these people, and a lot of them do end up shifting to the right. But still, it's not who they are inherently. They're defining themselves by what they're against. They don't want people shitting up the things that they love, whether it be political movements, whether it be institutions, whether it be fandoms, whether it be creativity, writing, art, comics, or games, or whatever it is. Everywhere they go, they make a new raft of enemies, and the more they fight, the more enemies they create. So that's one big problem, in that everywhere they go, they alienate people and drive them into the arms of the enemy. Now, often that enemy is no better, but that's a problem for another time, I think, because they don't have the power to really do much, at least not culturally, which is where a lot of this is taking place. And because they have no solid ground, because they have no principles, and in part some of this comes because of postmodernism, of course, because everything is subject to critique, everything is torn down, there is no basis upon which to make any kind of decision, no objectivity, no rationalism, nothing, then on the one hand that lets them be slippery, but on the other hand there is no solidity to anything that they say or do, and there is an inherent contradiction in that postmodernist, deconstructionist outlook. And they claim to be progressive because progress is a modernist idea, not a postmodern idea. I mean, the very idea of progress, of something being better than something else, is antithetical to postmodern beliefs. So, you know, philosophically, much as I hate to delve into philosophy because it's virtually worthless, but philosophically, they don't have a leg to stand on either. You know, there is no solidity to their position. It's an advantage in the short term, but long term, I think it's gonna cost them. And the other thing that really weakens them is intersectionality. Now, you would think that being able to bring people together who all agree that they're oppressed in some way would be a powerful thing, but it doesn't bring people together. It divides them. So you're a woman, great, but you're white. That's bad. So you're now divided from all the women who are women of colour or whatever else. It's an indefinite and self-cannibalising purity spiral. So as well as making enemies everywhere they dick things, they're also making enemies amongst their own kind, if you like, their own broad political church. by having this never satisfied purity spiral where even the slightest deviation from pure wokeness is treated as though you're literally Hitler. So that's another inherent weakness that they have. And a strength that the opposition has is that they don't do that necessarily.
I came up here to build a bridge.
There's a reason I've interspersed this with clips from Zulu. And besides just, breaking up the monotony of me wonking on at you, and besides the bonus effect of triggering people's anti-colonialist sentiment, which I would actually share, the reason for that is that it shows how a relatively small group of disciplined people working together in an organised fashion can stand against overwhelming odds and even earn the grudging respect of the people that they're fighting against. So when there's a strength in standing on a principle, in a unity of purpose that can prevail against, in this historical instance, an individualistic warrior culture, though Shaka Zulu did bring in reforms that made them a much more effective fighting force. So how can we learn from that? What's the parallel there? Well, if you look at something like Gamergate, that was a huge variety of different people all across the political spectrum, well, across the middle band, really, all coming together on a single or perhaps a couple of different points, actively fighting censorship, for one, and wanting their consumer media to serve their interests as a consumer and to act ethically, not to take bribes, not to try and foist a political perspective or opinion upon them, instead of doing what they're supposed to do as a consumer review market, whatever you want to call it. But that brought people together, and that was very powerful, and that was an emergent order. There was a chaos, if you like, in the consumers, and then this singular principle, this particular thing, brought everyone together and made them a very effective fighting force, so long as they stuck to those central principles. And you can see the opposite happen in something like the Occupy movement. That started out as people all the way from right-wing libertarians all the way through to left anarchists, all uniting against certain things going forward. The money in politics, the idea of corporations as citizens, this united people across all kinds of boundaries, and then the intersectionality started, and then the purity spiral started, and then it fizzled all by itself. The government didn't need to do anything, the banks didn't need to do anything. It killed itself because it failed to retain that singular sense of purpose, and people began arguing with each other over other things. So that there is power in having principle, in that it can bring people together towards a single purpose who otherwise might disagree. So that gives you access to numbers, gives you access to focus, gives you access to money, resources, all these kind of things. So that's really powerful. And it lacks that intersectional purity spiral. Sticking to your principles is also the long game, because in the long run, we have these principles for a reason. And you look at the Kavanaugh trial. I don't think he should be on the Supreme Court, but I think that's because of his authoritarian tendencies, his partisanship, his support for the Patriot Act, his belief that basically a president should be able to run off scot-free from any kind of accusations or whatever towards him. These are all decent, good reasons why he should not be confirmed. But what have people gone with? They've gone with a show trial that abrogates a person's right to be considered innocent until proven guilty. And that's a principle, so it goes beyond the court. The court's procedures derive from the principle, the basic logical principle of the burden of proof, which we use in science and everywhere else in our lives, So if you fixate on that principle, then people will be united in opposition to the smear job and the hack job that's going on, while there are plenty of decent reasons not to confirm him that don't require this kind of circus. So that's another example. There's a principle, the right to be considered innocent until proven guilty, that is being abrogated by this illiberal pseudo-left. when there's plenty of decent, good reasons, principled reasons, to take a stand against him being confirmed. Yeah, and each one of these fights creates more refugees who will then stand against this authoritarian pseudo-left. So if you're someone of principle who believes in the principle to be considered innocent until proven guilty, even if you don't support Kavanaugh, you will now be unsettled and hostile to what has now reached out from the universities into the superstructure of societies at a national and global level. So every fight they have, they create more opposition. So there's hope there. But the main thing, the main thrust I really want to take with this is that principles are good. They don't make you weak. They might not win in the short term, but they win in the long term. And they give you something solid, and they allow you to create very broad alliances in support of those principles. So don't give up your principles. Don't sink to their level. Stay disciplined, iron the prize, fire in ranks, gun down those Zulus. Zang.
Today. See, I don't like the, I have, okay, like a lot of you, I hate a lot, you know? But I hate with style and creativity.